Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Questions on British Muslim TV with me, Mohammed Shafiq. We're broadcasting now on Sky Channel 752 and across social media on British Muslim TV. Wherever you are joining us, a very warm welcome. We want you to comment on the stories we are featuring. Call us now on 01924231083 or message us on the WhatsApp number which is on your screen now. Or if you're watching on Facebook, post your comments and we'll share them on air very shortly. Yes, I know the football is on. I'm a sucker for punishment. And so if you're still watching us, congratulations, you probably don't want to watch the football. I'll keep you updated anyway on the score as my producer and colleagues in the control room tell me something might be happening. But anyway, we will talk up to Daisy. Denmark have just scored. It's 1-0 to Denmark. But I'll keep you updated about that in a second. Now, 16 years ago, the July the 7th London terrorist attacks happened on this day. 52 people were killed and so many more were injured. Those attacks had a profound impact on their families, and on this day, we particularly remember them and send them our love and support. The big story this week is Labour holding on to the Batley and Spen parliamentary constituency in a by-election last Thursday. Kim Ledbetter, the sister of Joe Cox, was elected with 13,296 votes. The Conservative candidate Ryan Stevenson got 12,973 votes. And Workers' Party George Galloway came third with 8,264 votes. The majority was 323. Now, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, said Labour is back. He said it was a victory for hope over division and decency over hatred after what was described a bitter campaign and just a start for the Labour Party. Conservative Party Chair Amanda Milling has said it has been a disappointing result for her party. However, recent resignation of Matt Hancock as Health Secretary after breaking social distancing rules was one of the number of different issues that came up that has been raised by voters on the doorstep. But she added that for her party to run this close was still exceptional, given it has been in government since 2010. Their candidate did not engage BME media, including not coming on to British Muslim TV's debate. His Twitter feed didn't have a single photo with a BME voter. That in itself is a story. He's probably kicking himself for doing that. Had he engaged even 10%, if he had engaged even 10% of the Muslim vote, he might have stood a chance of taking that seat. Now, George Galloway, who came third, said he would take legal action to challenge the by-election result, his defeat, based on the false statements made about him. He said there had been false statements about him laughing while the winning candidate, Kim Ledbetter, was abused. The whole election campaign was dominated by lazy and false tropes about our campaign, he said, about the thousands of people that voted for us, about their motives for doing so, in a way which defamed them as much as it defamed me. Now, on Monday, Boris Johnson announced an end to COVID restrictions in England will go ahead on July the 19th. Face masks will no longer be legally required and social distancing rules will be scrapped. There will be a final review of the data on July the 12th, but this will confirm the lifting of restrictions. There will be further announcements. We expect tomorrow and Friday, this week on the school bubble, which we've seen already, but on travel and self-isolation. Now, in other news, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has been criticised for his support for China's actions towards the Uyghur Muslims. He said, and I quote, "Our interaction with Chinese officials, the version of what is happening in Xinjiang is completely different to the version of what we hear from Western media and Western governments. This is disputed by international human rights groups that genocide and ethnic cleansing was going on in which the Chinese authorities have denied." Now, my question to Prime Minister Imran Khan, how can you speak with any integrity on Kashmir and Islamophobia and then remain silent, or even worse, defend what is going on to the Uyghur Muslims and have any integrity left? It is amazing what money and investment and power does to some people. Promise you, we will revisit this story in the weeks to come. Now, shortly we head to Batley to talk to one of the town's most important Muslim voices. Iqbal Bhana joins us live shortly and will stay with us for the whole programme. Then we head to Huddersfield to talk to the Labour activist Imran Safdar about that by-election campaign by Labour and how he thinks they won. And we finish off in Luton to talk to Taj Ali, a freelance journalist who talks about Labour and the Muslim vote. So the whole programme tonight is about Batley and Spen, reflecting, learning and what now for Labour, Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats and indeed for George Galloway. I want to hear from you tonight. You can call us now on 01924 231 083 or message me on British Muslim TV across social media. Alternatively, you can send us a WhatsApp message. The number is on your screen. Now, the questions we're considering tonight: has Batley and Spen saved Labour leader Keir Starmer's job? Now, the Conservative Party chose to ignore the Muslim vote. Is this one of the key reasons why they lost? And what now for George Galloway? Please share your thoughts now on 01924 231 083 or messages on WhatsApp or post on social media, and we'll read some of your comments throughout the programme. So yes, it's 1-0 to Denmark if you're trying to remember the football score. But anyway, let's get started with our first guest. When Tracy Brabham won the West Yorkshire mayoral election, it led to a by-election which attracted national focus. Jo Cox was the MP there for 5 years ago when she was murdered by a far-right terrorist. Labour selected Kim Leadbeater as their candidate, as pollsters and commentators claimed the seat would fall to the Conservatives. Well, we know that turned out false. Iqbal Bhana is one of Batley's most important Muslim voices. For decades now, he has been providing important leadership, which has impacted not just locally, but across the country. He's been an advisor to former Home Secretaries and a race equality campaigner longer than I've been alive. In essence, he's been at the heart of the British Muslim community. I'm really honoured and pleased Iqbal Bhana is here. He is joining us live from Batley. Iqbal Bhana, assalamu alaikum and welcome to the programme. It's great to have you back.
Wa alaikum salam, Mohammed Shafiq. It's a great opportunity. Thank you to you for bringing me back to British Muslim TV. I've missed the viewers there. I totally...
We miss you. We're always talking about you here at the studio.
I don't think many would agree that the most important voice in Batley at all. I'm sure there are many, many more worthy people here. But I mean, we start with...
Let me declare an interest. I'm biased because I've got a soft spot for you. A lot of respect, a lot of love for you, sir. So I think you certainly are one of Batley's, if not the UK's most prominent voices. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what is your reaction to that sensational Labour hold in Batley and Spen?
To be honest with you, I think you're right. That had the Conservative candidate made any effort to try and interact with the Muslim vote, I think there was potential there for him to capture more than 10% of the vote, as you said. I think the fact that he did not send a very clear message to the Muslim community that the Conservative Party were no longer, or at least not interested in Batley, in capturing their minds, their hearts and minds, and offering them something that the Muslim community would feel that they have something that they can count on. And therefore, I think the Tories lost it rather than Labour winning it, in my opinion. And I think the surprise I had was that Kim, I mean, well, in a way it was not a surprise, but Kim had a lot of personal support. And by being the only local candidate, many people, including those who say they're normally Tory voters, had supported Kim on the basis of two issues. One is that she was the only local candidate, and B, she was the sister of the brutally murdered sister Jo Cox, who was a really good dear friend of mine and with whom I worked very closely. So that, you know, and then obviously that you raised the issue about the campaigning and the various parties, and my views on this are very clear. I think it was unfortunately a very toxic campaign led by certain people.
Iqbal, we're going to talk about the campaign in a lot of detail. I know, thank you so much. You are staying with us for the whole programme. You're with us till 10 o'clock. And as always, anybody who wants to join us in a conversation, okay, it's 1-1. England have just scored.
So disappointing result, yeah.
I know, it's you know, you and me here as professionals are so dedicated to being broadcasters that we've kind of given up our time to be on here. So for those of you who might want to keep an eye on the football, if you see me screaming or being totally excited, you know why that is. But anyway, it's 1-1, so we're in a good position. The smile is back. So just tell us, you yourself have supported Labour for decades. You took a different path in this election. Why was it?
I think, for 40 odd years, I worked very, very hard at every election to work for whoever the Labour candidate was, whether it's a local election or a national election. As I said, I worked very closely with Joe Cox, even with Tracy Bravin in the end, to try and get her elected. And therefore I've been a Labour's committed supporter for over 40 years. But I think, and in fact, I actually said to Kim when she got the nomination that she can count on my support, and I'll give her just as much support that I did to her sister Jo. However, then the attack on Palestine and the people of Palestine, Masjid al-Aqsa happened. And the silence at the leadership of the Labour Party raised this concern in me that if my party and the leader of the party that I've supported throughout my life can sit back and be totally silent when my brothers and sisters, whether they're Muslims or Christians in Palestine, are being killed and murdered, then I do not feel that party continues to have my principles and values.
Labour would argue, Iqbal, that they haven't remained silent. The leader, Keir Starmer, had raised it in a tweet and has certainly raised a statement. He mentioned it at Prime Minister's questions. He challenged the Prime Minister on that. So he wasn't remaining silent. He just happened to have a different viewpoint and was more balanced on the issue there.
Well, I think if historically or chronologically, his sort of response to it came much later than one would expect. The Labour Party I believed in, and I still, to a certain extent, believe in the party's principles, is the party that always fought for the oppressed and those who are being suppressed by far-right extremists, whoever they may be. I worked very hard on anti-apartheid issues, and as a result, I've been blessed by having 2 private meetings with Nelson Mandela, before he died, and 3 in total. But as I say, 2 private ones. And I was committed to anti-apartheid, and I felt that we are now witnessing apartheid in Israel, in Gaza, and in Palestine. And this party no longer seems to be concerned about those sorts of issues that are very dear to me.
Okay.
And I felt that also the Islamophobia in the party.
I'm just pause there. I know you're going to stay with us for the whole programme. We're going to take a very quick break, and then when we come back, we'll carry on the conversation with Iqbal Bhana as well, but taking some of your calls as well. Join us on the other side of these very important messages. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, wherever you are watching this around the world. I've been told, been given a nudge on Twitter, well, if people are watching British Muslim TV and not watching the football, then probably they don't want to know the football updates. But I need to know the football updates. So, and Iqbal needs to know as well. Iqbal Bhana, the one and only Iqbal Bhana, is here with us. He's going to be with us throughout the programme. But Iqbal, we love Iqbal Bhana. I think the whole team here loves you, Iqbal.
Thank you very much.
We've all got a very soft spot for you. So just tell us, we were talking just before the break, about the Israel-Palestinian issue. Obviously, we told you what the Labour Party position is on that. But the issue of Islamophobia has also played a part in this campaign. Tell us what your views are about Labour and Islamophobia.
I think it's been very obviously. There's the report that came out a couple of weeks ago, which showed that majority, quite a substantial majority of Labour members itself feel that the Labour Party has sort of root and branch Islamophobia within its institution as an organisation. And I mean, some of us, maybe you have in the past, witnessed it when in the early days of becoming or joining or supporting the Labour Party. And that seems to so continue to travel through the organisation. And you would expect an organisation like the Labour Party, which has, for the last 40 years, virtually survived on the minority immigrants who came into this country, their votes. Throughout the whole of the country, you will see whether there were people from the African Caribbean or the African subcontinent or the Asian subcontinent, majority of these people automatically gravitated towards the Labour Party because they felt that the Labour Party had the best interest at heart. And the Labour Party represented the ordinary working class people in this country. The people who came here from the Asian subcontinent and the Caribbean, who got into sort of menial, what some would call menial, but absolutely very important jobs, like textiles, like transport, like the health service, like the care service, all these people sort of felt that they belonged in the similar, very same socio-economic group. And therefore, that resonated with the Labour Party's principles and values at that time. The trade unions, which most people joined in the 60s and 70s, sort of, recruited the people. And there was an affinity there. Now it seems like the Labour Party has distanced itself from some of those principles and those values. And we have seen it slowly, as it has crept into the Conservative Party, where it's probably much more open. The Islamophobia has crept into the Labour Party as well. And I wonder, why it is that the leadership of the Labour Party has not really been able to tackle that. We have the highest number of elected members in any political organization, whether at local electoral level, in local authorities, or even on a national scale in Parliament. Yet it seems that Labour Party has not been able to tackle the issues that the Muslims feel that the party is no longer representing or taking into account some of the more important issues that challenge the Muslim community.
Now, Jo Cox was your friend. You worked very closely with her. You championed her. You helped get her elected in 2015 general election. And you've also worked closely in building community links and bringing communities together in the aftermath with Kim Leadbeater, her sister, now the MP. How do you think Kim's going to be as an MP?
I think she'll be amazingly good. I mean, her background is not politics, obviously we know that. But I mean, she did a fantastic job taking on some of the crusading work that Jo left behind, particularly the issues around we have more in common. And following the death of Jo, and Kim sort of took on the mantle of developing that initiative locally and nationally. And I supported her, and many people in Batley supported her as well. And we held events, in locally as well as regionally and nationally on an annual basis to try and bring communities together. So she is very, very good at bringing people together and developing that community cohesion. I think the reason why the Muslim community turned against the Labour Party, by and large, was two reasons. One is the leadership's position on Israel and Palestine and Gaza and not coming out. I know you said he made statements, but most people felt that those statements were not robust enough. They did not actually push back against what was happening to the people of Palestine, and particularly the attacks on Masjid al-Aqsa as well. And remember, when we talk about Palestine, we're talking about Christians as well. They were equally victims of the atrocities, the attacks that were taking place. And therefore, people felt that, the Labour Party that they supported for 30, 40, 50 years, or their parents had supported, young people felt that that is no longer the case. The Labour
Party has never been, you had 13 years of Blair.
I know.
And Brown, Blair himself was very pro-Israeli. I think Ed Miliband was the first leader who under his leadership, that Palestine was Labour policy, recognising Palestine as an independent state. So the idea that the Labour Party has always been pro-Palestinian is just factually not correct, is it?
No, it isn't. And I think a lot of this distancing and disenfranchisement by the Muslim community, particularly the young, is stemmed from Tony Blair's era, from the Iraq War. I think people felt from that time that the Labour Party has not listened to them. And particularly after 9/11 and 7/7, when Tony Blair sort of went around the world canvassing support for the attack on Iran, I think a lot of people felt that this party does not represent us anymore. People like me and others remained in the Labour Party, and I'm not sure whether you know this or not. Last week, I was officially thrown out by the Labour Party.
I didn't know that. Is that a breaking story? A man with 40 years service for the Labour Party has been kicked out of the Labour Party.
I was a member for 40 years. I've been a member for a very long time. But then I got an email from the Labour Party saying that because, you have declared your support for George Galloway, under the rules of the Labour Party, you can no longer remain a member of the Labour Party. So I challenged it. And I said, where can you prove that I supported George Galloway?
Yeah.
So then I got another email saying that, you have declared that, you're not going to support the Labour Party and the leader, and you're going to send him a clear message. A platform I shared with you in Bradford, and I think on those grounds, they've now thrown me out of the Labour Party. And I don't have any regrets about that.
Yeah.
Because as I say, I don't feel that the Labour Party follows the principles and values that I thought they had, and the ones that I have as well, So to me, it's no great loss at all, But we have tried to be in the party over all these years to try and see whether by being within, we could change the party to think more sort of broadly and more widely about some of the issues that affect the Muslim community. And obviously, we're now seeing that the Labour Party seems to be turning to the right, and rather than the one.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, that's I think a big story. Certainly to see that happen.
I thought you were aware of it. I'm sorry, I didn't let you know yet.
Well, we've not had a catch up in a while, so I can understand. But yeah, but let's just concentrate on. You would think that 11 years of a Conservative government, you wouldn't think the Tories would have even been in it, and that they were 323 votes away from winning this seat. The Conservatives were absent from the Muslim community. We know that. You know that. Their candidate, Ryan Stevenson, didn't even bother coming to our debate here on British Muslim TV that was hosted by Joseph Hayat. And all the other candidates were here. Not a single tweet or photo with Muslims in Batley and Spen on his Twitter feed. Do you think that was a massive mistake on the part of the Tories?
I think it's an absolutely huge mistake on the part of the Tories. I mean, I've had some of the big Muslim businesses that are in Batley and Spen say to me, we were expecting the Tory candidate to come and talk to us, find out what our financial sort of business needs are, and had they come and spoken to us, we would have considered not only allowing them to visit our employees, but maybe even vote for them. And they were disappointed that the Conservative Party had not. And we have some very big businesses here. Remember, in Batley and Dewsbury area, in Kirklees, we put 70% of the UK public to sleep, not because we are boring, but because we make 70% of the beds and mattresses for the whole of the UK. So there's a big industry here that is absolutely vital to the British economy. And I would have thought the Conservative Party, I mean, in the neighbouring constituency, we have Mark Eastwood, who's very, very close to the bedding industry, for example. He works very closely with the community there. He's worked very closely with the Pakistani Kashmiri community, and he has a lot of support. And I'm really surprised that the candidate, standing in Batley and Spen, didn't actually emulate what Mark Eastwood was doing. Had he done 1/5 of what Mark Eastwood has done in Dewsbury, he would have got more than the 330 votes that he needed to win the constituency. And that is a huge mistake on their part.
Yeah. As I said, obviously that's something which we've kind of reached out to the Conservative Party to see if they wanted to come back with us. And the important aspect of this debate is that, we don't expect the Muslim community to always be supported by political parties, but we at least have the decency and respect to engage the Muslim community. You're somebody from Batley and Spen. Just tell me, what did the Conservatives do as an external broadcaster watching this campaign? I didn't see anything with the Conservative candidate and the Muslim voters. Did you see anything?
The only thing I witnessed was the leafleting that was coming through my door. I never saw any Conservative campaigners on the streets around near where I live. I hardly saw any campaigners in the town centre itself when I was going about my business. I understand that they may have tried to see one or two members of the community, but that was done very much in private. There was no public engagement with the Muslim community at all. And these are possibly, the very close friends and allies of the Conservative Party that they met. But as you say, they seem to take no interest whatsoever in the Asian Muslim community, regardless of whether Indian or Pakistani. They just did not seem to be interested in canvassing. And I think as a result, the Conservative Party lost possibly more votes and more support than they would have done otherwise.
And do you think it was also to do with what Amanda Milling, the Conservative Party chairperson, said was the Matt Hancock effect? The fact that Hancock played out on the doorstep because people are actually saying, here is somebody who's made the rules, who's breaking his own rules and expecting us not to kiss our grandparents, not to hug them, to meet them outside. Don't you dare do that. There's a chance you could spread the vaccine. And that played a role as well. Do you think that played a role?
I don't think that played a role within the Muslim community. I think the Muslim community had made up their mind before that episode took place. I think it played a role quite substantially, I believe, in the normal people who vote for the Conservative Party, the non-Asian Pakistani Muslim people in the constituency who vote for the Conservative Party, maybe not regularly, or not so total committed Conservatives, but who were thinking of supporting the Conservative Party, who felt that there was dual standards being applied here. That, here was a minister who initially had, the publicity came out about what he'd done. The Prime Minister had said, no problem, he's apologized. I'm not going to take any action.
Iqbal, we're just reaching break stage again. And what we'll do is we'll take a break. When we come back, Imran Safdar, who's a Labour Party campaigner who's been on the doorstep, he's going to join us and share his thoughts about the campaign. And we'll carry on the conversation with the one and only Iqbal Bhana. Join us on the other side of these very important messages. Don't go anywhere. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. Yes, the second half is about to start. It's 0-0 at the moment. Sorry, it's 1-1. Clearly, I'm not paying attention. Clearly, I'm paying more attention to what's going on in this studio and Batley and Spen by-election and listening to the one and only Iqbal Bhana that I am doing with the football score. But it's 1-1, sorry, 1-1 to England and Denmark. And the second half is just about to start. We'll keep an eye on that. Thank you so much for staying with us throughout the programme, Iqbal Bhana. But I'm also pleased that the one and only Imran Safdar, who is a Labour Party activist who's been campaigning for Labour during this by-election, he's joining us from Kirklees. And welcome to him. And we'll be taking your calls on 01924231083. You can get in touch with us now on social media handle British Muslim TV. We're continuing our reflections on the Batley and Spen by-election. Iqbal Bhana is still with us, and I want to welcome Imran Safdar, formerly, as I said, from Kirklees, who's been on the doorstep campaigning in this by-election. He's a colleague here of mine on British Muslim TV. Pleased to say Imran Safdar is joining us live from Huddersfield, just up the road. Imran, assalamu alaikum, welcome back to the programme. Great to have you back.
Well, pleasure to everybody, and I hope everybody's having an enjoyable night with not too much nervousness.
I know you were watching the football. We are so grateful. Our producer, Annabelle, gives us really hard punishment by having the programme continue on a night when England are playing. So the sacrifices me and Iqbal are making is for the bigger good. Anyway, how do you think England are doing so far?
I think, to be honest with you, I don't think they're playing with the same discipline they had against Ukraine. Against Ukraine, it was all about keeping the ball, possession, football, rather like Italian teams of old, but a bit worried, mate, honestly, because the Danes do look impressive, very fit and physical. Talking of physical, let's talk about Batley. What happened? I was just
going to ask you. So you've been on the doorstep for our viewers' sake. In your eyes, talk us through about that Labour campaign. It was a huge operation. Tell us about it.
So we managed to get trade union members, people from various branches of the party, and alhamdulillah, we got lots of Muslim parliamentarians. I think the key, there's a lot of talk of some miscommunication, some disappointing incidents with allegedly within the Labour Party. But one thing was clear to me. We had lots of hardworking mums, dads, brothers, sisters, Labour members, councillors, parliamentarians from all walks of life join Kim and her team, again, many trade union members as well, who were literally on the side of people, the viewers watching, because the Tories are on the side of the viewers, let me assure you of that. They were knocking on doors, taking notes, listening, and I personally saw Kim make calls and go out to visit constituents after they raised serious issues on the doorstep. Because Kim worked incredibly hard, her team worked hard, and I think her victory is because she was working with Labour Muslim councillors and MPs, people like Nasha, Khan, as well as people like Councillor Afaq. But
Imran, we will come to that. I promise you. Iqbal Bhana is still with us as well. Iqbal, just tell us, in your eyes, as somebody who lives in that community, what was the engagement like with the Muslim community from Labour and Kim Ledbetter?
I think, as Imran says, I mean, I must pay tribute to the Labour Party activists and the workers of the Labour Party, because I think they really threw everything into this campaign. There was no doubt about it. I mean, Afzal Khan, who's a very close friend of yours, And he was here virtually every week. Every Friday I saw him here outside my mosque. Naz Shah, Mrs. Qureshi and others. And we had I've never seen...
the Scottish Party Labour leader as well, yeah.
I've never seen so many members of Parliament, Labour members of Parliament, turning up in a constituency the way they did here. There's no doubt about it. Proportionally, if you look at it, with that amount of resources thrown into the area that they did, they should have had a huge majority. And therefore, in a way, despite all this, the 331 or whatever it is a sad loss that the Labour Party suffered in real terms.
Yeah, Imran, sorry, go on, Iqbal, sorry.
So they did throw in. I must say, Kim, give her credit. And as I say, I love Kim. I've always had a great respect for her. In fact, before the election, before Palestine happened, if you ask her, I actually sent her a message to say, Kim, I will work for you as hard as I did for your sister Jo. And I got a message back. And then Palestine happened, and I changed my mind. Yeah. That's when I changed my mind with the leadership. And I said to Kim, I'm really sorry. It's nothing to do with you. I like you, I love you, I respect you, but it's your leadership that I have issue with, and the party as an organisation.
Now, Imran, it was a very nasty campaign. Accusations from both the Labour Party, but also from the George Galloway campaign. What did you experience on the ground, knocking doors, about that nasty campaign?
Well, some of the local mums had some interesting viewpoints. One local mother called him an extremist chancer. A local father said that he was, I've got to echo these sentiments, he was playing games with a very sensitive subject. Now, let's say Galloway had the backing of 400 or 500 British MPs. Maybe he could, in that instance, affect real change on the international stage. But one man, seriously, one man who's got some, and again, some of the mothers and fathers on the doorsteps expressed concerns about his links to Chris Williamson, about his support for, alleged support rather, for Bashar Assad. There's some ambiguity, there's some murky, some very, very murky information about his, his denial of the severity of the Uyghur genocide going on. He's made some rather alarming noises about the BLM movement. Yeah. So this was expressed on the doorstep, and it felt like the Tories supporting in the Scottish elections and the Nigel Farage, Steve Bannon supporting Galloway was confused himself, and he's there to confuse the voters. Lots of brothers and sisters, people, very honourable people like Brother Iqbal there, who've got genuine and real heartbreaking concerns that many of us share about foreign policy concerns about Palestine. Galloway seemed to be playing with the sensitivities of the Muslim community.
You could argue that the Labour Party was also playing with the sensitivities of the Muslim vote. Keir Starmer, in this instance, he was very supportive of Israel's right to defend itself, and because of the rockets into Israel, was very quiet about the Palestinians that were being attacked, and then raised Palestinian recognition of the state in Prime Minister's question during the by-election campaign. He and your party was as opportunistic as George Galloway. Politics, mate.
Shafiq, the position has always been clear from the Labour Party. We support a two-state solution. We support various United Nations resolutions. And just today, Afzal Khan, Wayne David, various parliamentarians, I lost count, Kim Lebbett as well, were involved in a Palestinian meeting to discuss solutions and what legitimate peaceful action we can take. Various people from various organizations, even some Jewish professors and Muslim organizations were protesting and talking about the human rights abuses. Many Labour MPs were on that meeting today. Afzal Khan, people like Naz Shah, people like Kim Lebbett were there leading the debate within the Labour Party. Trust me, when it comes to human rights abuses, the Labour Party is the only party in the UK that could, inshallah, make positive change happen in the future. The Conservatives, they have a shocking record in supporting and selling weapons.
We'll talk about the Conservatives. We'll talk about the Conservatives in a second. Imran, just bear with us, yeah? Iqbal, at times it felt as if the Muslim community was being used as a political football for campaigns
definitely.
by Labour and the not Tories, were non-existent, but the Labour Party and George Galloway's campaign as well being accused as a political football. What would you say as somebody who's from that community?
I would totally accept partly what Imran said. George Galloway is a chancer as far as I'm concerned. He's somebody who is addicted to elections, and he looks at opportunities to put himself in the press, in the media, as far as I'm concerned, to try and highlight his own personal position. And in my opinion, he used the Palestine issue to try and pull at the heartstrings of Muslims in this community.
Indeed.
And that was the only tactic he had. Had it not been that the Palestine attacks, the attacks on Palestinians and Masjid al-Aqsa had not taken place, I don't think he would have stood a chance. The only ticket he had was to use the Palestinian sort of tactic, the Palestinian issue, to try and win support, and that's the only
which he would argue. He would argue, sorry, Iqbal, he would argue that he's been consistent for decades in his support for Palestine.
Well, there's no doubt about it. But I go back to Imran's point. One of my issues, I mean, people ask me which way I'm going to be voting, which way I'm going to be supporting. And a lot of people wanted to know where I am, but I completely stayed neutral this time. But privately, I did say to people that, in my view, like you know how Parliament works, you know how politicians work. And I said to people, one man cannot make a difference at all. He may scream and shout, but he cannot bring one penny into the constituency. I think this election has been extremely damaging, not just at a local level in the way it has fractured community relations, but it's been extremely damaging to the Muslim community. We could have used this election as an opportunity to show the power of the Muslim vote. We could have all worked together. And as you know, you've heard me say this on a number of occasions. Forget the Biradari politics has really let us down really badly in the past. We need to start looking at the new type of Biradari, and that is the Biradari of Islam. Forget the fact that you're Indian, you forget the fact you're Pakistani, forget the fact you're Deobandi, forget the fact you're Barelvi, Ahl Hadith, whatever you are. We need to work as a community, as a whole, to say we have 15,000 votes in this constituency.
Imran, I want to give you the sort of next 60 or so seconds because we've got a break coming up. Did you think that Labour was going to win? And can you just address that issue? Something changed in that last week. Following a debate here on British Muslim TV, there was a change on the ground. Did you see that coming as well?
I think the local mothers played a hugely important role. And with no disrespect whatsoever to my brothers and fathers and the men of the community, but one particular pharmacist in the area, wished to be unnamed, said that Batley, before the by-election, and indeed even before that, before the awful far-right terrorist murder of our very own Joe Cox, Batley was a relatively placid, calm, peaceful Asian community. There wasn't any far-right extremism, and there wasn't any childish, laddish generalizations and silly homophobic behaviour that we saw in this campaign. I think the mothers were maybe the moderating influence. They saw Kim for who she was, a hardworking local activist, a charity worker, someone with deep roots in the community, someone who really cares about this part of Kirklees. So I think the fact that maybe the Greens didn't stand, Lib Dem changed their votes, and the fact that...
Just stay there. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll carry on the conversation with Imran and the one and only Iqbal Bhana. Join us on the side of this. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. Yes, we are live. Yes, we're not watching the football, and some of you don't want to watch the football, which is fine. But anyway, it's 1-1 at the moment still, so there's hope for us all. Iqbal Bhana is still with us, still going strong, like the England players. But lots of young people, Iqbal, got involved in politics this time, in Batley and Spen, due to what was happening in Gaza.
Oh, definitely.
And how important is that we've got so many young people now interested in politics than we would have had before?
Absolutely hugely important. I think people need to realise that their vote can make a difference. And I think that's what happened. And the majority of the 8,000 votes that George Galloway got was probably the people within the age group of between 25 and maybe even less than 25 and 45. And that's my interpretation of what I've seen. And that is because, whether we like it or not, he did galvanize the young Muslim voters to come out and vote and register their protest, which is what they did. They wanted to protest against the Labour Party in particular, to say, you are the party that our forefathers have supported all these years. And even, after 40 years or so, you are not listening to what the Muslim community is telling you, what the Muslim community wants and needs. And therefore, we are no longer going to support you blindly as our parents did. And I think that is why they came out in droves to support George Galloway. Now, whether they were right in their interpretation of what George Galloway was promised them to do, and this is where his ability to orate his views and try and convince people that he can deliver things that we know that he can't, as Imran said. Because I know that one man in a parliament of 600 or more people cannot deliver anything.
Well, you look at the Labour Party, 200 MPs. What have they delivered for Palestine?
Nothing. And that's what I'm saying. And he sold this false message. And it reminded me of some of the I don't want to use the word that in the Wild West you have those shysters going around selling medicine for all sorts of ailments. And I think he had this medicine that he was promoting.
Look, he's not here to defend himself, but I'm sure he would say that he has been consistent over the years on Palestine.
Now, and I respect him. I've shared platforms with him. I've shared meetings with George Galloway. I had a lot of respect for him, for his stance on Palestine. Had he not stepped into this constituency and used Palestine as a platform, maybe I would have changed my mind about it. But on a single issue that he came in for, I think that was very damaging to the Muslim community. And he's left the community here in tatters in a way. Because the toxic campaign that was run here, has left a lot of bad feelings between families, between friends, people who used to eat together, who used to share, the love of football and cricket together. They were polarized and divided.
Imran, let me ask you, do you think that personal promise on Palestine and Kashmir from Kim directly to voters made a difference in winning that seat?
I think so. I personally delivered the letter to a few homes that Kim wrote about the concerning situation in Palestine. The situation for the Uyghurs is also extremely concerning. Human rights abuses taking place in Yemen also of serious concern. We're seeing serious human rights and almost genocidal problems across the Muslim world, across the wider world. And it is only with a progressive centre-ground or centre-left government, not just in the UK, but across the G7, across the NATO government, a collection of governments that we're going to see positive change. So the Labour Party isn't perfect. I actually moved from the Conservatives due to austerity and Islamophobia to the Labour Party because I see it as it is a broad church, but it is the only conduit.
But there's allegations of Islamophobia within the Labour Party as well.
And they are being taken seriously and they're being investigated. And let me tell you, we haven't got Labour MPs retweeting Tommy Robinson's posts. We haven't got
we have Labour spokespeople of Keir Starmer's private office telling the Daily Mail that Muslim elders are voting against the party because of Keir Starmer's stance on anti-Semitism.
You see, now, I did hear concerns about that on the doorstep, but we've got to address these issues. Islamophobia, hate towards Christians, hate towards Jewish citizens is unacceptable. We can't cross over into generalising an entire faith group. We've got to deal with Islamophobia in every political party.
Which is what the Labour spokesperson was doing.
We've got to deal with all forms of hate crime. Keir Starmer is having a tremendously difficult job, but the message from the party from Lisa Nandy, from Wayne David, and from Keir Starmer has been clear. We support the two-state solution, and we utterly condemn human rights abuses wherever they may be. Now, the way to help people in the Uyghur refugee camps, in the Palestinian refugee camps, is for us Muslims in the UK, like Iqbal says, is to organise in a peaceful, forward-thinking, progressive fashion. We've got to look how the ANC, with their peaceful campaigns against the apartheid situation in South Africa, really got world opinion on their side. We've got to look how other human rights campaigns across the world have been successful. We cannot fill ourselves with hatred, and we cannot generalize. In fact, if you look at professors, academics around the world,
I've given you a good run on that. But the fact that your party spokesperson, who's talking to the Daily Mail, is generalising. We're going to take a break. Let's take a break. We're going to come back, and let's tell you that we're going to take a break for Azan-e Maghrib in London and surrounding areas, wherever you are around the rest of the country. Follow your local timetable. When we come back, we'll talk to Imran Iqbal. Join us on the other side of this. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here, live on British Muslim TV. Yes, it's still 1-1 in the football, but we're talking about Batley and Spen. Now, Iqbal Bhana is still with us. Iqbal, the one positive thing that you could take from this by-election, and there was probably loads, but the one I could take, being an anti-racist campaigner that you are and I are, is that the far right came, they tried to divide, and they ended up getting what? Anne-Marie Waters getting 197 votes, and the other one, I can't remember her name now, Jaden Francis getting 47 votes. So the far right was smashed in this by-election.
They were absolutely hiding. And I think this is a message that the people of Batley and Spen, regardless of what colour, creed, faith you are, that we don't want the likes of them in our communities. We don't have any time for them. We don't have any support for them. We don't need them in our communities. They are people who all they trade on is hate, and those are the people we want to reject totally outright. And I must pay tribute to the citizens of Batley and Spen who sent me that message absolutely clearly, unequivocally, that is something that they will not tolerate. And I hope that they've learned their lessons, that they will not repeat what they've done, what they tried to do in Batley and Spen across the other constituencies in our community, in our communities in our country, because their message is being totally rejected and thrown out by the people of Batley and Spen, and I'm sure it will be thrown out by all the other good citizens of the United Kingdom, wherever they may try to appear. And they try to make capital of it. They try to use a number of sort of local issues that have flared up over the last few months. And again, very clearly, they were told in no uncertain terms by the citizens of Batley and Spen that, despite all their efforts, they have no track in this community at all.
I don't know if Imran's still there. Okay. Okay, thank you, Imran, for joining us. I know it's difficult on the night of the football. Not soldiers like you and me, Iqbal.
Well, yeah, we've been fighting the fight for a long time. Can I just say, I must pay tribute to the women who sent out a message 2 or 3 days before the election.
Did, yeah.
I'm not sure whether
I tried to get them tonight to come on. Obviously, they weren't available to come on. They're probably just recovering from the campaign. But there's a vibrant community spirit in Batley and Spen. And it's going to take a long time to recover from the vicious and nasty campaign. And as Kim Ledbetter said, she has to live in that community. People in Batley and Spen have to live in that community. And now the media circus has moved on. Do you think the community will be able to come together after this bruising campaign?
I think it will tail, as I said earlier, it has fractured community relationships between families, between friends, former friends, people who used to, play cricket together, football together, used to go out for meals together. It's actually fractured the relationships between people. It has been absolutely bruising in some respects. Some of the messages that people who purported to support George Galloway were putting out on social media were absolutely atrocious. In fact, our imams on the last 2 Fridays, our imams from the pulpit condemned their behavior and their action and told them very clearly that is not the way Muslims should behave. And they gave examples of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he behaved in similar situations when he was being attacked by other people, and how when they were discussing issues of politics or or fiqh within the community, within the masjids, how people should interact with each other. And the imams are very, very clear. It's the first time in a Gujarati mosque that I'm aware of in my 65 years, because Gujaratis by and large don't like to bring politics into the masjid. At all costs, they have avoided politics in the masjid, ever since I've been a child that I've known about it. And I was surprised. And in fact, I sent a message to our Imam on the first Friday he did it, to say, I applaud what you have done. And they made it absolutely clear that the behavior of some of the people was absolutely atrocious and absolutely unacceptable. And this attacks on Kim, attacks on personal attacks on women within the community who were supporting the Labour Party. They were absolutely dreadful people. Some of the messages are going out.
I just want to ask you quickly, because we've got less than a minute before our break, and then we're going to move on to our new guest. But just tell us, Labour lost thousands of votes. They lost 8,000 plus votes. And rather than have a post-mortem about why they lost those 8,000 votes, they just seem to be blaming George Galloway for a nasty campaign, which he obviously says that he's not been involved in.
And that is why I think this, Labour is back. This statement by Keir Starmer is going to come and haunt him, I think. And the fact that I'm very clear on this. Had it been any other candidate apart from Kim, I am absolutely certain Labour would have lost this seat completely and utterly. Okay. And Labour would have had
Iqbal, stay there. Sorry, keep interrupting you, but we keep getting to these breaks. We'll come to a break, and then after the break, Taj Ali, the journalist and broadcaster, will be joining us to carry on the conversation. Join us on the other side of these important messages. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. We're live, yes, on this important night in football. If you want to know the score, it's 1-1, England versus Denmark. We'll keep an eye on the football. And we will also be having the pleasure in this last 30 minutes of the one and only Iqbal Bhana. Freelance journalist Taj Ali is joining us as well. He's talking about his article. A recent poll for Salvation on behalf of the Labour Muslim network of 504 Labour Muslim supporters found that there was a 12% drop in favourability for the Labour Party over the last 12 months. With the violence in Kashmir and Palestine, Muslim voters are saying the party cannot ignore their voices and take the vote for granted. Taj Ali, as I said, is a freelance journalist. He's written for the Huffington Post, Metro on the Independent and the left-wing Tribune magazine. He's based in Luton, in Bedfordshire. Really pleased that Taj is joining us live from there. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the programme. Great to have you on.
Wa alaikum salam, thanks for having me.
I was reading your recent column in the Tribune magazine about the Salvation survey, which we just talked about. Can you set out, in your thoughts, what that survey determines?
Yeah, so this survey was actually commissioned by the Labour Muslim Network, the network representing Muslim Party members within the Labour Party. And the Salvation poll found that actually support for the Labour Party had dropped amongst British Muslims. So there was a 12% drop over the past year in favourability for the Labour Party. And what was quite interesting was actually the support for the leader, Keir Starmer, was actually quite considerably lower support than the actual party itself. So he actually has a net favourability of -7% amongst British Muslims, whereas the Labour Party has a net favourability of 40%. So it did raise quite a few questions about the leadership of the party and whether the leadership is actually in touch with British Muslims.
Now, Iqbal Bhana is still with us. Iqbal, British Muslims are wiser to policy issues rather than previous generations who voted accordingly, as you said, what was suggested by so-called community leaders or family members. But now young people are so galvanised, interested in politics. It's about policy and the judging politicians by policy. Surely that's a good thing.
Well, definitely. And as I say, I mean, one thing that this election in Batley and Spen has done is really brought at the forefront of people, especially young people's minds, how important politics is to their lives, the day-to-day lives, but also, and this is where the international element comes in, that they feel that the parties have to take on responsibility of not just national and local issues, but also international issues. And it is because of that that I think the Labour Party lost 8,000 or more votes. There's no doubt about it. Because I know some people voted for the Tories, because I've been told by many of my friends that rather than voting for George Galloway or the Labour Party, they decided to switch their votes to the Tories, although the Tory candidate never turned up. Similarly, Keir Starmer actually never turned up. He did come to Batley on a couple of occasions, but he hardly ever met any of the Muslim members, except the very strong, sort of very committed, dedicated members of the Labour Party who are diehards, which is fine. But he didn't meet those who had not made up their minds yet as to who to vote for. And had he done so, he may have got a few 500 more votes possibly.
Yeah, Taj, do you think Labour is still suffering from its neoconservative foreign policy under Blair and Brown, the Iraq war, Afghanistan?
I think that a lot of people underestimate actually that there was already disillusionment with the Labour Party, and that happened 20 years ago. We saw that it was the Labour government that presided over the Iraq war, the Afghanistan war. And even when Jeremy Corbyn was leader, there was still a significant section of the community that actually said that this was the party that supported these foreign wars, and there was that sense of distrust. Now, I think under Jeremy Corbyn, whose voting record actually stood in stark contrast to sort of Tony Blair and the Blair right wing of the party, there was an increasing movement from British Muslims towards the Labour Party. There was this idea of the Labour Party being on the side of Muslims. I think Jeremy Corbyn's leadership actually demonstrated a break from the past, and the fact that actually the Labour Party can be much stronger on issues that we care about, like Palestine and Kashmir. And the fear is now that under Keir Starmer's leadership, we saw the U-turn on Kashmir. We saw
but Taj, the U-turn on Kashmir started under Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, so Jeremy Corbyn actually said that he has a position of solidarity with the people of Kashmir, which was actually, yes, a step forward.
The point I make is Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, Ian Lavery, who was party chairman, wrote that letter to I think the Labour Friends of India, which changed the dynamics of the debate to being a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. So the sort of U-turn on Kashmir started under Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, from what I understand, Jeremy Corbyn made clear his support and solidarity with the people of Kashmir. And when Keir Starmer actually became leader, he'd actually said that the Kashmir issue was a bilateral issue. And this is when a lot of the media outlets picked up on this sort of change in support for Kashmir. And I think that was partly to woo over Indian voters who had actually deserted the party. But it did not bode well with the Muslim community. In fact, 100 mosques had actually threatened to boycott the Labour Party over this stance. There was an open letter published in the Muslim media organisation 5 Pillars. So under Keir Starmer, I think there was already a considerable amount of anger over these issues. And the fear is that the Labour Party could potentially go back to that Blairite past where the concerns of Muslims are sidelined. And I think that is probably what has driven some element of Muslims deserting the party.
Iqbal, Keir Starmer is a human rights barrister. He's well respected and well liked and has got a good record. What seems to have happened is the power and the leadership of the party has kind of curtailed his ability to speak out like he used to.
I think there's a combination of factors here. I think there are other forces at play that are dictating the policy of the Labour Party more so than others. And I think that is something that is unfortunate because, proportionately, we as a Muslim community have 3 million, citizens in this country. We have huge potential to make sure that, either the Labour Party or whoever we decide to vote for comes into government. Because as I've been saying from many, many years ago, when I used to come to your program, on Ummah TV, that there are 100 constituencies, as far as I'm aware, that if the Muslims work together collectively, as I've been saying over the last few months, we could determine the outcome as to who is elected. And I think that is a significant. I think some people are starting to realize that. Some people are beginning to understand that if we work together, we can elect people who have the caliber to understand and reflect the views of the Muslim community in a much more robust way than they are doing at the moment. That's no reflection on some of the people who are in parliament or in local government, but they are having to toe the party line. And that is something that is, holding them back. But I mean, I would say to Keir Starmer, whatever your record was prior to becoming leader of the council, leader of the Labour Party, your record now is totally impunged as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And you will hemorrhage Labour supporting voters, traditional Labour supporting voters, as you move forward, unless and until we have confidence that he is listening to what people are saying.
Taj, do you think that sense of the fact that the Labour Party was the party that introduced the Prevent programme, the Labour Party was a party that had the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, and a sense that the increasing demonisation of Muslims by politicians started under the Blair government, and a sense of removing those civil liberties, that's still a cloud hanging over Labour?
I think definitely. I think especially with the older generation, that sentiment is still there. And like I said before, I think a lot of Muslims were willing to, in 2017, 85% of British Muslims supported the Labour Party. And yes, I think people will remember the past. And I think now the responsibility of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party is actually to say, no, we are not going to take your votes for granted. We are going to listen to your concerns. And I think even when Muslims had, this disillusionment with Labour's foreign policy, many were still voting for the Labour Party because the alternative was the Conservative Party. And I think a lot of Labour politicians and commentators have often banked on this idea that Muslims have nowhere else to turn to, and therefore a vote for the Labour Party is a given. Well, actually, if you look at this election in Batley and Spen, George Galloway aside, the turnout was 47%. And obviously, turnouts in by-elections do tend to be lower. In 2017, Labour won 55% of the vote and 8,000 votes. And at the by-election, they won by 326 votes, I think it was.
323, yeah.
And the point is that actually, Muslims can have voter apathy and not turn up. They don't have to vote for the opposing party, but they might not turn up. And that is just as damaging for the Labour Party. So I think it's about winning people over. A lot of people are saying, well, what does the Labour Party stand for?
But what's sorry, Taj, what's the alternative? Yeah. What would you say is the sort of left-wing alternative to, say, the Labour Party? Because if it's a straight fight between Labour and the Tories, people would vote for a Labour government, surely. Yeah.
I mean, I joined the Labour Party, actually, at the age of 16. I'm 22 years old now, and I joined because I believed that we could actually change the Labour Party, that we could actually make it, more reflective of British Muslims and have a radical policy agenda. And I'm still fighting for that because I think it'd be very difficult, under our first past the post system for a third party to succeed. George Galloway and the Respect Party have had some success in places like Bradford in 2012, for example. But there has been a movement and people have been talking about actually boycotting the Labour Party and not turning up to vote. And yeah, I think in terms of the solution and what we can do next and what the alternative is, for me, the alternative is actually the Labour Party engaging with the Muslim community. We as Muslims in constituencies, I think there's 22 constituencies that are like Batley and Spen, where Muslims make up more than 20% of the population. We should be demanding certain things. These foreign policy, issues, for example, Palestine and Kashmir, forget electoral reasons. Any progressive party should be advocating for this. We shouldn't have to be, having to write letters to them and lobby them. This should be expected of our representatives.
Which is what Kim Leadbitter has been so outspoken on, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think Kim Leadbitter is a fantastic candidate, and I think she's going to be a great MP for the constituency. But we also know, for example, we've had this recent thing come out about Trevor Phillips, for example, being quietly reinstated into the party. And he's got his own history of anti-Muslim sentiment. And very few MPs, Labour MPs, have actually spoken out about it. And even MPs representing considerable Muslim
Sorry, Taj, just stay there with us. There's about 5 minutes left in the football. It's still 1-1. And we're going to take our final break. I know Iqbal Bhana and Taj Ali are going to stay with us. Join us on the other side of these very important messages. Don't go anywhere. I'm watching. Welcome back. Yes, the football is still going on. It's the final segment. We've got about 3 minutes left in the football for the full 90 and then extra time, potentially. Penalties? God, no. Anyway, I am nervous. I don't know about you, Taj. Are you nervous?
Nervous.
Very nervous, yeah. But anyway, we'll come back to that. Just before the break, you were talking about Trevor Phillips being reinstated, and that quietly being kind of not dealt with accordingly to the party rules, as some complain, including Afsana Begum, the MP for one of the MPs for London. But the other issue that really stood out was that Labour leaders, Keir Starmer's spokesman, speaking to the Mail on Sunday, saying the reason the Muslims are deserting Labour is because Keir Starmer's doing so much on anti-Semitism. That sort of generalisation was quite offensive, wasn't it?
It was very offensive. You know, this was a senior Labour Party source that had briefed, of all papers, the Daily Mail, which has its own history of Islamophobia, saying that, you know, Muslims were deserting the party because Keir Starmer was robust on anti-Semitism, which is quite ironic because, you know, Muslim party members have been demanding that the Labour Party takes action against all forms of bigotry, you know, including anti-Semitism and both Islamophobia. But what I wanted to talk about was actually when working class communities have deserted the party, as we've seen in the Red Wall in 2019, political commentators talked about how the Labour Party must listen to these voters, that must understand their concerns and win them over. And, you know, Muslims are disproportionately working class. You know, according to the last census, nearly half of Muslims lived in the lowest 10% most deprived boroughs in the UK. So these Muslim voters are part of Labour's traditional working class heartlands. And instead of listening and engaging with these voters, they're being smeared. So it was quite disturbing. And you'd think that in a by-election where you're trying to win over disillusioned Muslim voters, the last thing you'd want to do is smear them. But that's exactly what's happened. And it's a shame. And it seems like those at the top of the Labour Party seem to arrogantly assume that they can say whatever they like, that they can ignore the concerns of Muslims and they will get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, Iqbal, the sense that the Labour Party has to change as well, its structures and processes in terms of Islamophobia. We know the two reports from the Labour Muslim Network, but Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have both accepted every single recommendation. Is that progress now?
I think accepting a recommendation, actually putting them into action, is two different things. I mean, we've seen, you know, governments accept all sorts of recommendations across all sorts of issues. It's actually making sure that those recommendations are acted upon and actually delivering them. That's when the proof of the pudding is going to be. And I suspect that, you know, by simply saying we accept the recommendations of the report and we'll take all the appropriate necessary action, simply is not going to cut it. I think young people now are much more savvy and much more, you know, switched on in the sense that they want to see a shift taking place. This conflation of anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism is a huge issue in the Muslim community. I am committed to challenging and eradicating all forms of anti-Semitism, whether it comes from whichever quarter it comes from. You know, and I'm totally dedicated to that. But I'm also an anti-Zionist. I want to see a two-state solution. I want to see the Palestinian people have a secure base where they can, you know, have some dignity and humanity. And, you know, because I'm anti-Zionist, you know, I'm now being labelled as anti-Semitic by some members of the Labour Party, and that is not acceptable. And this is where the Labour Party needs to make sure that it's very clear on its stance between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism.
Taj, in 2017, in the general election, under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, the Labour Party got 85% of the Muslim vote. What do you put that down to? Because obviously since then, it's gone significantly down.
I was very active in that general election campaign, actually. I was in college. And we were signing up so many young people to vote. There was a genuine enthusiasm that this time round there's going to be a change. Jeremy Corbyn represented that change. He represented a radical, transformative economic program. And look, I was somebody that used to think that Labour were the Diet Coke version of the Tories, that there wasn't much difference between them. And I was one of those people who'd actually signed up as a party member at the age of 16 to support Jeremy Corbyn for the leadership of the party. So I think Corbyn, despite obviously nationally he wasn't as popular, which is something we have to accept, but in the Muslim community, his track record in Parliament, but also outside of Parliament, he was involved in the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. He was an active member of the Stop the War Coalition. He had certain traction within the Muslim community. So I think there was a huge wave of enthusiasm there, and that was a considerable part of that story of how he managed to get so many people to support the Labour Party in 2017.
Yeah, and Iqbal, the issue of Palestine became an issue which the left united on during that time in terms of the last, 20, 30 years. And you remember that historic conference motion recognising a Palestinian state was a significant moment. Do you think that's a moment in history, or that that the Labour Party can recreate that?
I think, unfortunately, with the current leadership, that is a moment in history. I think the current trend that the leadership is taking is in a direction that many Muslims are totally sort of concerned about. And I think, Taj is right, that, young people are now much more savvy, much more switched on, as I say, and they're going to be looking at the wider picture and the wider issues and the responses of the political parties. And this, there's only the Labour Party, because we know where the Tories stand, as you've said on a number of occasions, and we can't expect much hope from the Tory party. The only way we can do that is, as I said at the beginning, and that is if the Muslim community works together as a collective, leaving behind their backgrounds, their...
Oh, seems to have frozen there, Iqbal. But let's see if we can sort that line out. Let's talk to you again, Taj. In a sense, you've got Keir Starmer now really making some promises on Palestine to get... Okay, let's take a caller, because we want to take some callers. Sure. Let's take a caller. Assalamu alaikum, caller. You're live on British Muslim TV.
Yeah, well, I'm calling. I'm just wanting to touch on your topic. Look, you mentioned Keir Starmer. In fact, there's quite a bit to say, but Muslims did not vote for him for Labour because of his stance on this so-called anti-Semitism. I don't even know what that means. Arabs are Semites too. Now, it's only because we all know why. It's because he forced out Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn is no longer what? Is he no longer Labour? I don't even know. But
he's a member of the party, but he's not part of the parliamentary parties. He's been suspended from that.
There you go, something like that. Now, he's a two-faced, backstabbing Judas. Let's face it. Look, I will never. Yeah, that's my opinion. In game to sue me if you can. Right? But
sorry, what did you say? Sorry, what did you say? I don't understand.
No, you can. No, I'm just saying that Keir Starmer is two-faced. So this is why people don't trust him. Look, my friend, there's too many Blairites there in Labour Party. There's too many. That's why you have this ongoing battle between them. Okay? So, and as far as all this nasty politics, I remember, because you mentioned George Galloway. Remember his Respect Party. Way back then, I don't know if you remember this Una King woman. I live in the East End in E1.
Bethnal Green and Ball.
I remember when she had leaflets, talking about Palestine and this and that, how they suffer, but they never do anything. Keir Starmer's not going to do anything, my friend. I guarantee you that. Okay, Labour have been doing this for a long time. I don't know if your young reporter there will agree with me, because and it's going to go on like that. They say two-party. They're talking about two-party. Two states. How is that even possible? They're occupying 81% of Palestine. How is that literally possible?
Okay, let's put that question to you, Taj. Thank you so much, caller. The accusation that politicians will just do whatever for votes, but actually won't change the dynamics on the ground in Kashmir or Palestine. So what's the point voting for them?
I think that's a sentiment shared by a lot of people. And actually, I remember a lot of commentators were actually saying how talking about Palestine and Kashmir will actually deter working class voters from voting for the Labour Party. And actually, in the Batley and Spen by-election, on the leaflets, they'd plastered Islamophobia, Palestine, Kashmir. But a lot of voters looked at those leaflets and said, well, you wasn't talking about this a few months ago. What's changed? And I think that sense of, you're only there to win our votes and you don't really care about the issues is a sentiment that a lot of people have. So the difference with Jeremy Corbyn was actually because he'd had that track record, because you'd see him visibly at these protests, because you'd see him at these events, there was a sense of trust. And it's going to take a lot of work for the Labour Party to win back that trust. And a lot of people are very cynical. They think it's impossible now.
Yeah. Iqbal, I want to give you the final sort of question to you. What's going to happen in that general election in 2023, 2024, whenever that is, whether it's a 4-year term or a 5-year term? What's going to happen to Labour and the Muslim vote?
I think Batley and Spen, to a certain extent, has been a sign for the rest of the Muslim community across the country to actually witness and see what we could have done. Had, as I say, we worked together collectively, as long as there's no divisive person coming in, we would be able to determine who wins. And I think the Labour Party, if it wants to survive as a party, as an entity, championing equality and diversity and championing human rights, not just only in this country, but across the world, has to start listening to not just the Muslim community. There are many non-Muslims as well who are absolutely disheartened in the way that the Labour Party is now moving. And that is something that is of concern to them as well. And therefore, the Labour Party needs to have a root and branch sort of thought about what it stands for, where does it want to go, who does it want to represent, and who does it want to be part of the vote?
Just very quickly, because we're coming to the end of the programme, you think the Muslim vote is going to go down in terms of voting for Labour?
Well, definitely. I think this is...
Let me ask you, Taj, as well. Sorry, you're just running out of time. We could stay here all night. But Taj, just tell us, what do you think is going to happen to that Muslim vote for the Labour Party?
My fear is that actually, I don't think Keir Starmer's going to last, by the way. I think at the conference, they will change the Labour Party rules to make it more difficult for someone on the left to actually become leader.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sorry, Taj, I promise we'll bring you back. We'll have this conversation. We take a 2-week break now for Hajj and Eid. We'll be back on Wednesday, 28th of July. But for me and everybody at the team, thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself and each other. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.